Here I am doing an install for a block heater for my 2012 Land Rover LR4. A lot of people don't know this, but you can get block heaters for Land Rover LR4s specifically and LR3s. A lot of Ford vehicles also use the same block heater, which I'll show you in a minute. But a couple of preliminary precautions. Obviously, jack your vehicle up, take off your front left driver's tire, and make sure you disconnect your battery terminal, just to make sure that when you're removing the height sensor, that it doesn't start acting weird on you. So as you can see here, I've disconnected this for easier access into here. But before you do that, you'd have to take off all of these heat shields. There's three kind of small heat shields, but they are a pain. It's only a couple 10mm bolts, but you do have to kind of reach in there with a small ratchet and then a medium ratchet and then a ratchet with an extension. So it's a lot of playing and bending, but you'll get them out eventually. So after removing all of those heat shields, the freeze plug, which is this guy right here, it's a 17mm Allen head, which I just used this socket I got from AutoZone. Came in a set of 3 for like 15 bucks, pretty good. This is located way in the back over here. I'll get a better picture of it later, but it's way in the back here, and you will have to have a pretty long extension with a swivel socket to be able to get to that. So it is a bit of a pain to line it up and get it in there, but it does work eventually. And so once you do crack that freeze plug, it's not torqued in there very well. I mean, it's pretty loose. You don't need to put much force on it. But once you do that, a ton of coolant's going to come pouring out if you haven't already drained your coolant reservoir or coolant radiator. But since this is fairly fresh coolant, I'll just be refilling whatever I lost. But once that happens, I would recommend to take off your skid plate as well, as if you don't, a lot of the coolant will just come rolling off the back of the skid plate and it'll cause a much bigger mess than I've already made here. So I would recommend to do that for sure. And here's the block heater itself. This is the part number there. I got this from Napa for like 70 bucks. It's a pretty solid deal. It takes a 27mm socket to screw it in. I put a little Teflon on here to make sure it doesn't leak, because I do not want to be taking this out again anytime soon. This block heater also comes with a paper gasket, so I would definitely recommend to put this on. Alright, I took a bit of a break. I made a run to O'Reilly's to get some wiring insulation, because this is going to be sitting next to the exhaust, which is unideal if it's not protected. And then I struggled for a very long time trying to get that block heater in there, which I did successfully get, because I was trying to go basically from the side here or the side here, and unless you have tiny arms, it's basically impossible to get a good grasp to screw that in. So I found that you can kind of go underneath, kind of between the frame and the sway bar here, and you can kind of see it meets almost perfectly where the block heater goes. I did just get a wobble extension so I could kind of maneuver it a bit better, but it almost perfectly lines up, so that worked out pretty good. Heat shields are back on, everything looks pretty good. I had a couple more zip ties here and there to secure it. Also, don't forget to reconnect your ride height sensor. So that's basically it for this. I'm going to reconnect the tire and then start the coolant bleeding. And as for the coolant that I'm using, it's just this Peak European Vehicles coolant. It's applicable to, I guess, all Land Rovers 1996 and 98 up. As long as it doesn't have methanol in it, it's good to use. So I'll be using this. I think we only really got like half a gallon out of that, so we'll see. Maybe this will be just enough, maybe not, but we'll see as we start bleeding it. Alright, everything should be done. I'll explain how the bleeding system works. So your bleeding system has 3 plugs. You have one plug on your expansion tank right here. You have another bleeding plug under your intake manifold right about here, so you have to take this off. And then you have your other drain plug, which is all the way over here. So you take all 3 of those out, and you fill your coolant up until it starts bubbling out of this filler port, and then you screw it back in. and then you make sure to screw that one back in, because I forgot to do that when I turned it on, and all I saw was a fountain of coolant. So, but yeah, everything's good now. So I made sure that's tight. The second plug is tight, and then let it run for a bit. Leave the coolant cap open in this expansion plug, and yeah, that's basically it to bleeding. So everything should be all set. I'll figure out somewhere to route this to, but that's basically how to install a block heater on a LR4.